Okay, let me check your attendance. Today is 9:23. Abbas, Abbas Jumra, Baklas Erika, Badilles, Badilles, Bandal, Baroy, Baroy, Bukida, Bukida, Beltran,
Present, ma'am.
Kensha, Kanensha, Kuot Janmark, Kuot Janmark,
Afternoon, ma'am.
good afternoon, Kuot, um, Fabian, Fabian, Gipitulan,
Present, ma'am.
Grabozo, Grabozo, Hampong,
Present, ma'am.
Hampong, Lipana, Lipana, um, Lufranco, Lufranco, Mara, Mara,
Present, ma'am. Present, ma'am.
Mariket,
Present,
Mariket,
ma'am.
Jedefe,
Present,
Moncada,
ma'am.
Necesario, Necesario, Umungos, Justin,
Ma'am, present, ma'am.
Ramirez, Ramirez, Sharon, Sharon
Ma'am,
William,
ma'am, present. Present, ma'am, Sharon.
Socaldito, 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 Salvalion, Salvalion, Silungan, sorry, Silungan, Tapping,
Wala daw yung signal dito, ma'am.
si Silunga,
Yes,
Tapping
ma'am. Di na do
Tutor,
kayang...
Present, ma'am.
Valier,
Present,
Valier,
ma'am. Ma'am.
Viste,
Present, ma'am. Present.
Villares,
Present, ma'am.
Zamora, Zamora, Rojas, Rojas, Jacqueline. Okay. So last time we discussed the nature and meaning of public policy analysis. We discussed public policy, and then the systems theory, and then the history of public policy analysis, and we ended with policy outcomes, I believe. What are policy outputs, policy outcomes? Have you remembered? So that what is left for chapter 1, what is left undiscussed for chapter 1 is approaches to policy analysis. Okay? So we have here, I believe you have read also, we have here three approaches to policy analysis. We have the analycentric approach, the policy process approach, and the policy approach. So the definition of analycentric approach is that it is an approach in policy analysis which focuses on individual problems and its solution, and its scope is micro scale. Usually, it involves technical solution to individual problems. So the question to be answered here is, is the problem of an individual or individuals, and what is the solution? So if we were to analyze a policy which has been adopted to solve the problem of individuals, then this is analycentric approach, no? If we are to base our analysis on the problem and the solution of the individual, that is why the policy has been adopted, then we are using analycentric approach in policy analysis. May ang yang scope, ngano kang na may policy ngayon, ani? And if ang focus of the analysis is on the problem of the individual and the solution of that problem, then we are doing analycentric approach in policy analysis. The second approach is policy process approach. The scope here is mesoscale and interpret problem using polymerence. So we are looking at the goals of elected officials. And the focal point of this policy process approach is, of course, the political process, and that involves stakeholders. Who are stakeholders? Kinsa ning mga stakeholders? Those stand to benefit or to be disadvantaged by there are many one. Okay, Ross, therefore, okay, sige.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon. So in policy process approach, it aims at determining what processes and means are used and arise in the preferences of stakeholders within the policy process. And this policy process relates to the mechanism through which public policy is made. So here, in policy process approach, if we are to analyze the existence of a policy based on policy process approach, we are focused on the conversion process of the systems theory. Now, please take note, conversion process involves many steps. Determining of goals, determining the needs of assessment, specifying objectives, designing alternative courses of action, estimating the consequences of alternatives, selecting courses of action, debates, deliberations, public hearings, voting, and discussions. So if we are to analyze the existence of policy based on policy process approach, then we are to focus our analysis on the conversion process, which is the center in our systems theory or system model. Please remember that our first box is inputs, and then we have here conversion, and when we have here outputs, and then the feedback. So din sa conversion process, this involves the policy makers, the government officials, and the people. Kuha na to? Ang first analysis is analycentric approach, focus on the analysis of the individual problems and the solution seen by the government. That is why the policy has been adopted. In analyzing a policy using policy process approach, then we are to focus our analysis on the conversion process, which is the center of the systems theory or Estonian model. And we are to look at how the policy was made. The policymakers, the government officials, and the people involved in the conversion process. Now, what is the difference between policy process approach and meta policy approach? Meta policy approach, this is a system and context approach. So we are to look at the entire system. We are to look at the entire system from the inputs to the conversion to the outputs to the feedback, and then it goes, no? Because this is a cycle. The difference is that in meta policy approach, the entire system is being studied. This is being analyzed. Whereas in policy analysis approach, we are to focus only our analysis on the conversion process. The conversion process. Nakuha na to, yeah? Now, as policy analysts, our main concern is to know why some policies succeed and why some policies fail, so that policymakers will no longer commit the same mistake in the future. No, to our failure and if a certain policy being studied by us as policy analysts yield a result wherein the policy is a failure, of course, by using the approach of policy analysis, now we are analyzing a certain policy using the three approaches to policy analysis. The result of this, whenever the analysis yield to a result explaining why a certain policy failed, then of course the policymakers will be warned not to commit the same mistake again. Otherwise, the policies that they will make in the future will be a failure. But after the analysis and the result shows that a certain policy is successful because of this, not because of this, because of that, based on our policy analysis, based on the approaches that we have here, then of course the policymakers will use these policies as reference for the betterment of the lives of the people and as a reference for good policies in the future. That is why there is here public policy analysis. So, na-late ang uban, no? And we already did our discussion with the approaches to policy analysis. Now, I want you to remember that we are here as policy analysts. And most of our analysis is to give a hint to the policymakers nga, oy, ayaw ninyo buhata, ayaw follow ninyo policy because ning palpak ninyo policy because of the following reasons based on our analysis. And kung ang this analysis na to is positive, uy, indot ni siya nga policy. And the following are the reasons. Of course, that will also give a signal to the policymakers, yung andi ay dapat buton para ang mga policies mo succeed. Otherwise, ang effort in making a policy is futile. So, wala siya useless. Gamuhin policy, daghan kaayo ang gasto. Of course, in the implementation of a policy, especially programs, in the implementation of these policies and programs, kinahanglan gyud ni siya og money. Now, if there are policies na failure, it's a waste of money and effort on the part of the policy makers. And of course, it will not result into the betterment of the lives of the people. Take note, in our previous discussion, policy to better the lives of the people. Mo na siya purpose nga na maghimog policy for the betterment of the lives of the people. But of course, we cannot deny the fact that there are policies nga ning fail. And so, we are to study policies nga nung man siyang ning fail. Nga nung ang policy ning succeed. So, para makita nato na siya, in order to study the reasons behind the success or failure of a certain policy, then we have to use the three approaches to policy analysis. Now, to wrap up, I want to reiterate that centric approach policy analysis focus on individual problems. So we are to look at, hindi problema nga nung himo man ang gobyerno ingon nani nga policy. And then, so kani ang gihimo nga policy, this is solution, and then nasulbad ba ang problema? Diba? And then, if we are to use policy process approach, so ngano ingon ay ang policy? Ding fail policy or succeed ang policy? Ngano kaha? So our focus in analysis is the policy process approach. And ang policy process, this refers to conversion process katong after after the demand after the demand of the people, then the next step is the conversion process. Dito na, no? Dito na ang determination of the possible alternatives to solve the problem. And then, giun sa paghimo sa policymakers ang certain policy. And then, if there is a problem in the policy making, miss the conversion process, then makaingon ta nga, ay, mao di ang nipalpak ang policy. Wala niya nakuha ang iyahang purpose. The spirit of the law, wala nakuha. Because, na ay problema sa iyang policy making mismo dito sa conversion process. Another is the meta-policy approach, wherein ang istadihan gyud nato ang systems theory. Unsay nahitabo? So there is na interconnection between the inputs, conversion process, and the outputs. So mismo, ang system theory ang atong i-analyze. Giunsa man pag-demand sa mga tawo, kita yung gi-approach. And then, ning agi ba sa conversion process? And from conversion, unsa nahimo nga decision? So the entire system is being studied in meta-policy approach, whereas in policy process approach, only conversion process is being studied or being analyzed so that we can say that this particular policy DI is a failure is a success because dinhi sa iyang conversion process na ay problema or dinhi sa entire system mismo na ay problema. Okay? Sabtan to na to? Okay, any question? Before we went for activity, activity has been posted last time pa, no? I believe nakita na ninyo ang activity.
Yes, ma'am.
Oo. Okay, so I hope that you will be able to answer activity na correctly because na-discuss na ako what is analycentric approach, what is policy process approach, and what is meta policy approach. So you are to analyze the comprehensive, no, the fate of the please take note ang comprehensive agrarian reform program dugay na ni siya even before pagani sa but we even before the Corazon Aquino administration, but we are to study katunag yung sa kang Cory Aquino administration nga comprehensive agrarian reform program up to now because that is still an existing policy. So there are still places na ga implement pa sila sa comprehensive agrarian reform program. So we are now to analyze the fate, the destiny of this comprehensive agrarian reform program of the Corazon Aquino government. Let us foresee its future. Kung muhatag ba siya betterment of the lives of the people or not. Pero so far, no, dito sa inyong makita dito sa text akong gi-post, nakita na dito pa lang, no, dito pa lang i-appreciate its laudable program. It's really a good program, no? But nakita na nga during her term as President of the Philippines, wala niya na ang sitawag, wala niya nakabuot ang gusto niya, ang purpose sa wala ni dito pa lang. But still gina-implement pa gyud ng comprehensive agrarian program up to now. So you have to analyze fate of the comprehensive agrarian reform program by using analycentric approach, policy process approach, and meta policy approaches. Okay? So I hope by this time, sir, can you? No. At this time, you have to answer it based on the expression, and then we will see, no? We will deliberate on why. Okay? Okay, sige. So, mugana dito inyong mga analytical mind, no? Kinahanglan mugana dito.
Okay,
Aron
ma'am.
makita
Analyze
na.
ra mo na mo to, ma'am, no?
Yes, i-analyze ninyo on sa inyong ikaingon, mo succeed ba siya or fail ba siya, and why, based on the analycentric approach, based on the policy process approach, and meta-policy approach. Okay?
Ma'am, ning
Okay, so
extend ihang kuan, ma'am. Di ba
hangtod
27
karon
man
na
tayo mo?
pagyapon ang 27 ang
Atong una nga post, ma'am, kay 27 ang pasahan ato din. Pagtanaw na ko ganiha, ma'am, 29? Yeah, 29?
29. Yan,
Ma'am, silungan, ma'am,
29. Na,
President.
okay, naabadi ka ng, o sa 9, di ba kay ang 20, Wednesday man ang 20, dili na to klase?
Ako sa to
Nausab na
isa.
ako di ay. So dapat
Nausab, ma'am.
sa klase na to. Sige lang. Pagtanawan na, 27 to siya. Tanaw na ko ha, kay 27 to siya. Nagkamali ko.
Sige, ma'am.
Na ako gi-change tinood ka ganina sa isa ka subject. Unya, katoday ang akong nabutanga. Thank you for telling me kay nalibog po tong pika subject tingali.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay?
Pwede na po
Sige.
Pwede lang mo, ma'am.
Ha? I-check na to ba yung attendance na ato ning join after. I hope nga nakakungugra pod sila. Si Abbas na ana? Na ana no?
Yes,
Si
ma'am.
Jomra?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
Nana.
Class Erika? Baklas? Baklas wala gyapon. Bandal? Bandal wala. Baroy? Baroy wala gihapon. Kanensya?
Present, ma'am.
Kanensya. Okay. Kuot? Janmark?
Ma'am, mo
Wala pod,
excuse daw siya,
Fabian?
ma'am, kay tuwa siya ni Ma'am Balbosa, ma'am.
Si Kuot.
Yes po.
Ganong tuas Ma'am Balbosa, naman si Ma'am Balbosa diri sa office.
Ay,
Fabian.
wala.
Okay, sige. Fabiana, Si Grabozo.
Naaman to sila ganina.
Grabozo?
Left, man.
Out, ma'am. Yun ay signal niya, ma'am.
Okay.
Nana si Grabosa,
Dayon
ma'am.
si Lipana
Yes, present, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Lo Franco.
naagrabosa, ma'am. Hinay siya kaya kung kuan, ma'am, signal.
Okay. Si Lufranco. Lufranco, wala gihapon lagi ni si Lufranco. Dugay-dugay na ni siya. Ngano man eh? Sa ubang
Hinay na
subjects
signal
ninyo,
ba
musulod
sa-
siya? Maon si Sario.
Present, ma'am.
Si Ramirez.
Ma'am,
Ramirez.
present, ma'am.
Wala. Okay.
Ma'am,
Sokal
present,
dito.
Ramirez.
Sokal dito. Wala yung sokal dito. Salvalion.
Present, ma'am.
Salvalion.
Present, ma'am.
Silunga na no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Zamora. Nana si Zamora.
Present, ma'am.
Rojas.
Present,
Rojas.
ma'am.
Okay.
Present, ma'am.
Okay. Sige. Ang deadline, ang due date niya is
Ano mo, lagi
Monday.
ko tatawag, ma'am.
Ma'am Bukida, ma'am.
Umungos,
Ano
ma'am.
naman? Ano
Ano
may
na-
bukida na umungos.
Sige, thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
ma'am.
sige ha. So, by Monday, dapat submit na to, and then for you to know, makita, may balaan yung ano, sakto day mo or naamoy pagkakamali sa analysis. Okay? Okay, sige. Thank you ha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sige, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Sige.
Thank you,
I hope
ma'am.
nakasabot mo. Maura to siya ang kulang sa
Thank you,
chapter 1.
Magunsa.
Yes
Okay.
po.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Salamat,
Okay,
ma'am.
sige, sige. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you,
Stay safe
ma'am.
always.
God
Bye,
bless
ma'am.
you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Bye.
Ayaw, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mga plastic na sad, oh.
Gamitin mo
Guwapo
ang
kay ka, Dra Vicente.
Yung, ang birthday na ako nakasunod. Oo, kasama. Oo, kadong.
Wow, good job, Marisol.
Ay, opsa.
Yeah. Kata to. Ada si GM ya.
Bato daw siya lang mambalbusa. Ubus.
Imo yung burrito ng GM ya.
Wala lang si GM. Nada si GM.
Wala ay. Ato yung balbuto niya na si ma'am sa office. Ya. As GM.
Bullshit. Dili ay
Ikaw
mato
ba,
man to
Judith
sila
GM?
kay magpakuan man to silang title god magpabago. Magpa-correction ba?
Ikaw na ya.
Litsi. Ay, naman tag mali-malig title.
May magbugo ta na dan ya, no?
Dili guys kung necessaryo be.
Ato adira.